specifically studying the effects of generative AI and manipulated media and how it impacts social media communities, specifically those who are more susceptible to fake news or more susceptible to manipulated content.
Oh, this is going to be a long interview. So first, explain to me what generative AI is, and then I want to go into that second branch of what you just said.
Okay, so generative AI is basically where we have these models. We have large language models, we have image models that predict what comes next based off of reams and reams of data that they have been trained on. So when you have an image model, you collect thousands upon millions of images from what we like to call the wild. You scrape the internet and you get images, and you train a model to say, when someone gives you a text prompt, I would like for you to create a chair. They look at what it previously has known as what a chair is, and it will give you a new version or a rendition of what a chair is. And large language models operate in a different way, where you feed it lots of text that you also scrape from the internet, and it basically predicts what might come next in a sentence or a paragraph based on what it's learned, looking at previous text, previous sentences and paragraphs that it's been trained on.
So I will talk about myself and tell you that I am the queen of sending a super long text message, and it always predicts the wrong thing. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not it. So that's what you're talking about. That's very interesting. But now you talked about, you're really studying how this generative AI is impacting marginalized communities. Explain that.
So the first paper or the first project that I ever worked on was more so how can manipulated content and eventually generated content how can it affect or change people's perception, and how can it change people's sentiment of what they're seeing. And what we found was that usually once you put something that has a negative connotation, or even something that counters what someone thinks, that they really double down on their previous assumptions or what they believe to be is true. And no matter how much you might try to explain, oh, this has been manipulated in this way, or this is a generated image, this never really happened, they don't tend to change their opinions, or it's hard to get them to let go of whatever negative sentiment that they were presented with.
So it's interesting because I'm a journalist, trained journalist, and we always had to subscribe to very specific ethics, right? When you tell a story, you have to tell both sides of the story. It's always about making sure you alleviate any instance of putting your opinion in there. All these influencers and bloggers, I said, oh my gosh, it's like the Wild Wild West. Yeah, and the problem, I think there is certainly a space for people to express themselves freely, don't get me wrong. But we as a citizenry oftentimes don't do the extra work in studying to see if that's a credible person or if this is just your opinion. We kind of take it for fact. And the more popularity it gets, the more people who are reading it and sending it, the more we start believing that it's true. So explain what you found with that, because I think that's fascinating.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. And the second work that we've done was, who do people find credible online, and what is the influence that they have when it comes to what they push out. And we found that lots of people have been, creating fake profiles using generative AI. You can use these image models to create what we call deepfake images, and you might use the language models to craft, a very convincing bio, craft a very convincing website, and then you put together your profile and you you put it on a social media platform, and then you can push out whatever content that you want, as long as you are convincing. So people are posing as journalists, people are posing as health organizations and things like this, and they're posting fake news. And sometimes people know that the content isn't true. However, once you start interacting with it, the way that these platforms work, the more interaction that they get, no matter if it's positive or negative, it just further propagates it through the platform, so it reaches more and more people. And there are some people who can't tell the difference. They don't know that these profiles have been crafted specifically to influence their decision making and influence the way that they think. So we have those people who are trying to fight back against it. However, it doesn't work in the way that they think that it should work, because they're helping to further propagate the news throughout these platforms.
So we know that research shows that type of activity has created very polarizing societal thought when it comes to politics, for instance, and certainly healthcare. Most recently with the COVID-19 pandemic, should we wear masks, should we not? And so there's been quite a bit of research done that shows that folks were misguided in that. So talk to me about, you said that there's certainly an impact, but now how is it impacting the African American community specifically? What have you found?
Specifically, I think that the African American community, they're impacted because they don't have the resources to be able to tell these profiles. They don't have the firsthand experience of, being able to generate these images and then being able to see enough of them to decipher whether this is real or this is fake. And once the downstream effect of that takes place, you start to believe whatever it is you see, because you have not had the training that you need to be able to differentiate images, or you don't have the training to be able to differentiate the text because you never interacted with the models before. You don't know how to tell one thing from another, and the communities are having a really hard time. Black communities specifically are having a really hard time telling fact from fiction, especially with the amount of fake news that's being propagated through the platforms.
And it can be deadly. So I am doing my own research about social media and how it can be used as a positive technology. But one of the things that has fueled my research is a friend of mine from high school. His son committed suicide. He was a star athlete, great academic student, and he became a victim of sexploitation, which is exactly what you're talking about. A person misrepresented themselves, said they were a young girl his age, and sent a picture of a nude body and said, "This is my body, so now I've sent you mine. I've shown you mine, show me yours." And he sent it, and immediately they said, "Got you. So if you don't give us X amount of dollars, we're gonna send your pictures out to your family, your friends. We're gonna ruin your life." And this kid killed himself, and it's becoming more and more common. So what do you think it will take to even just inform our media consumers so that they know how to identify when something is not real?
I think this is a hard thing to do because there's generally no oversight. At least there is no oversight right now. But one thing that I've noticed that some companies are trying to enforce or trying to instill, at least, would be labeling the images that come from these models, or adding a fingerprint to the images, so that way someone can tell that this content is not original. It wasn't captured, but it was generated. This will help to inform people. No matter what it is that I'm seeing, I can differentiate between real and fake. And that's something that will help people to begin to identify and notice. And even if you might come across an image that's not labeled, because you've seen so many that are labeled and you begin to process in your mind, this is what generated content looks like, you might be better at being able to pick out of a lineup what is real and what is not real.
So I'm supposed to be asking you about your process and your journey, and so I'm going to get there, but I am fascinated by your research thus far. I know that there are some programs where, let's say, a parent can say, I don't want my kid to watch explicit videos or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that level of detection, is that something that they can broaden to include other types of content?
Right now, it's very hard to, when you create the models, you can, people usually do it with, we want to do it because it helps people. Because not everyone uses it in the way that it's prescribed or the way that we might think that they should use it, other people have created additional research or additional models to detect what might be generated. Because it's a evolving industry right now, the detectors are not 100%. So you can try to implement this, but you might not always get very accurate results. And as far as the image content, most detectors, they cannot track anything that didn't come from their model. So, for example, Facebook, they just released a policy this year saying that they're going to label images that come from their generative AI model. However, they can only label images that come from their model. They cannot label images that might come from another model, which is where it kind of gets a little difficult, because if another company decides that they don't want to implement that policy, you still have that content out there.
That's fascinating. I could really ask you questions about this all day long, but I really also want to learn about you.
Yeah.
Not just your research, but also you. So first, tell me about, because I see the passion, tell me about what first interested you in this field.
So I didn't have any computing experience before entering college. I got my undergraduate degree from Spelman College in 2020.
I didn't know that. You're my Spelman sister. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tear up. Okay, I'm sorry. No need to cut to break. I'm going to hold it together. Continue on, my Spelman sister.
Oh, yes. So when I got to college freshman year, I was an English major. I had declared I was going to be an English major. And I get to campus, I'm going through NSO, and I look at the requirements for English majors and I say, I don't really think that this is for me. So I'm walking through campus and a professor stops me and he says, have you ever considered, computer science? And I say, no, not really. I did a little bit of coding, HTML, CSS over the summer just because my friends were doing it. I hadn't really given much thought. I don't consider myself to be very good at math. I don't think I can do this. And he says, no, don't worry about that. We will teach you everything you need to know. And I was like, okay, I don't think English is for me, so I will give CS a try. And I switched my major and I went to class, and his enthusiasm really just kind of fed into me. And I saw the need for more Black women in CS. And I just fell head first into the field, and I've never really looked back.
What, I don't know if you've had this conversation with that professor, but what made that professor choose you and say, hey, let's try this? Because you're right, we need to recruit more minorities in this field. So it's just interesting that he took an interest in you and said, let's try this.
I haven't actually asked him, why did you pick me out of, other students? It might be because I was lost. I might have been looking lost in Upper Manly when it was time to stop at tables. But I do look back on a day very, very frequently, very often, because if he hadn't have reached out and said, you can give this a try, you can do this, we teach you everything that you need to know from scratch. I don't know. I hope that I would have eventually ended up in CS, but I do credit a lot to that moment.
That's phenomenal. So one of the things that we have been focused on in this is just that mentorship or ambassadors who encourage people who look like you and I to say, hey, this is something that traditionally we don't consider because traditionally we're not in this industry, but it's a new day.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that level of mentorship and helping you to guide you through something that was so new.
I got a lot of mentorship at Spelman because everyone in the department looked like me. They were championing me. I could tell that they really wanted me to succeed. I would have problems with homework assignments. I just wasn't getting it. I wasn't understanding. And I never felt like that they would let me, just kind of drift on by. They were always asking, what can we do to help? Can you come to office hours? Can you, go to tutoring or something like that? How can we make sure that you understand so you can, keep moving forward? The content builds upon itself. So if you miss out on one level, then the next level will be just that much harder. Days and days I would go sit in front of a faculty member and say, I need you to help me with this. And I was never turned away. So I knew that I could do it simply because they were there supporting me. And most of the professors, the women professors at Spelman in the computer science department are the first to get their PhDs in their respective universities, wherever they went. So it was just very inspiring to have that be the influence. If they could do it, we can continue to do it.
That has been a common thread throughout these interviews, and that is representation matters. What specifically is your dissertation going to be on?
That's a good question. I'm formulating that now. I do think it's predominantly going to be on, online abuse and the effects of generative AI for not just social media populations, but in general, the internet.
Online abuse? You got to go a little deeper. What's that mean?
Online abuse is, the way that I look at it is, we're using the internet in a way to cause harm or to provoke a certain emotion out of basically any user. We're propagating disinformation to change sentiment or change perception of a subject, or to get someone to vote in a certain way.
Manipulation.
Yeah. Manipulating people who can't tell the difference.
I want you to allow me to take a deep dive with you there for a moment. What exactly is the harm? What are the potential risks of this industry remaining as a status quo?
So one thing that I've noticed is the lack of representation of ourselves in the output of these models, or specific languages in terms of large language models being left out when it comes to the usage of the models. They really do a good job in translating text in English. In another language that's more native to a country in Africa, you might struggle because the models are not trained on those languages. Our communities are being left out because we're not in the training data. And if you're not in the training data, you don't have the opportunity to have direct output.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we are so underrepresented in computing?
I think the field has been around for so very long. We just haven't had we haven't had the opportunity to really ingrain ourselves in the field. And when we do try to ingrain ourselves, we face lots of pushback. We try to get in the rooms or have seats at the table, and we get pushback and people try to fight us. Or one thing I'm noticing is people are attempting to build solutions for us and say we no longer need to be in the rooms, or we no longer need to learn how to do these things or build up our computing skills because, solutions already exist. And it just kind of demoralizes our community. It takes away the opportunity for us to learn or build up our own passions and things like that. In general, I would say that we don't need to subscribe to being pushed out of the room. What's one thing I said yesterday in the panel session, that people are trying to convince us that we no longer need to learn these skills. And I don't think that's true, because that just closes off our opportunities to be in the room. If we no longer, learn how to program these models or build the models or train them, only the certain amount of people who do know how to do it will be responsible for the newer ones, building them up. And we know from, history and research that when we're not in the room or contributing to the discussion, we're not represented. So it's up to us if we want to see ourselves, in the output, to make sure that we're making the decisions on what goes in.
You talked about how oftentimes we can be pushed back or even out, shut out of being in these rooms. Have you experienced some of those hurdles during your journey?
Being pushed out, I have faced lots of rejection from, applying to graduate school. Sometimes your ideas aren't what they're quite looking for, or they've already met their maybe diversity quota, or they don't necessarily need you to be there. I have faced lots of turn downs, especially when you try to get your research out there, or you try to talk to certain people at certain conferences. It has been hard, but it's been a journey that I try to remember why I'm in it and why I started, so I don't give up.
Well, you just said something it's going to make me ask you, why?
Why? I don't give up because I know what I'm doing it for. I know that if I had the opportunity to learn about this field before I got to college, what a difference it would have made. I could be so much further along in my journey. There's so many students that I encounter that they've been programming or they've been taking apart their computers since they were kids. I had no idea I could be a computer scientist. I didn't even know that was a field. So now I work extra hard to make sure that no other minoritized student feels the same way. Like, we all know we're on equal footing. That way you can make the decision for yourself. Is computing something I want to pursue? I know about it, but you can't pursue something you don't have the knowledge about.
So that's what this series is all about. We want to expose people in our community to the reality of this industry. Number one, it is an option. Number two, it's a very vast array of options within this umbrella, right? So how do you think we can carry this information to some of the younger people? Because you said some folks been breaking down computers since they were young.
Yes.
So how do we attract the younger people?
One thing that I really enjoy seeing are, summer camps or after school programs where we bring the tech to the schools, or we bring the tech to the students. Robotics programs. There are some already established programs that we can implement into our schools. Parents can start at home as well. There's technology kits that you can buy for your kids that they're easy and they're beginner level, that will give them the opportunity to kind of tinker around. They can build their own robots or their own cars, and then they can go a step further and program them. That's like, middle school age, but it's my belief that we can go even younger. You can start teaching elementary kids about, logic and algorithms and things like that through coloring books or flashcards, just letting them know that this world exists, and what these things look like. If they ask the question, oh, how does this work? You go into depth about the technology behind it. Give them their computers and let them learn for themselves.
Because they're very much so immersed in this industry, whether you realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I know my nephew, when he was just learning how to walk, and I had a big TV in my room on a nightstand. So he crawled over to it, pulled himself up, and he touches the TV screen and he started swiping. I was like, what is happening? And it dawned on me because he's used to a phone or a tablet. And it's like these kids are truly experiencing life all the way in a different way. So we need to make sure they understand how this stuff is available, how these things happen. So I love that you said that. Have you found yourself in a mentoring position at times?
I have. I've had the opportunity to mentor college students all the way to middle school students. One thing that I have spent the past, I think, about 2 years of my graduate program, in my free time, of course, I work with a program at school in the education department called Connected Spaces, and we go to an after-school program specifically for young Black girls, and we go in maybe once a week or sometimes once every 2 weeks, and we teach them about STEM, give them the opportunity to tinker around with microcontrollers and wires and LEDs and things like that. And the looks on their faces when they realize I made this or I can do this, it's life-changing, and it's what keeps me going, because I know that we're introducing them to something that they have never thought that they could do. They want to use the technology, but they never thought that they could be the ones to build it. And whether they go on to do it or not, if we just, reach just one more, one or two, I think it's worth it.
So what will be your contribution to our society with the research that you have committed yourself to, my Spelman sister?
My contribution, I do hope that I can influence just a handful of more young Black girls to pursue a higher level or higher education, get their PhDs, because while it's not easy, I do think that it's worth it to be able to contribute novel knowledge to our field, to push the boundary just a little bit further, and have other people look at your work and say, this is important and I want to continue it. To be able to start that path, I think it's an incredible journey, incredible opportunity. And I'll work really hard to make sure that other people know it is absolutely possible for other people to be able to be in the same position that I'm in.
You said that it's not that easy, and I said, well, understatement of the year. I'm currently pursuing my PhD as well.
Oh, yeah.
And there are extra gray hairs on my head because of it. How do you find a balance? And for you to take the time to mentor the young people is amazing to me. How do you create that balance with all that you have going on?
It's really, really important to take the time to pour into yourself so that you can pour into other people. My research does come first. I spend a lot of time in the lab. But when I'm, outside of my office, I'm thinking, I'm calling my friends. What can we do? Can we hang out? My friends call me. I have a standing phone call with one of my closest friends from Spelman. Every week she calls me. She tells me about her life and I tell her about my life. And it's been one of the main things that I'm looking forward to. Every week I know that I can rely on these people to pour into me and to support me so that I can go out and I can support, other people.
I think that's phenomenal. And I'm so proud of you. I appreciate you for sharing your story. in your journey, and just continue to rise, my Spelman sister.
Well, thank you for having me.